Hi, welcome. This is Business Analytics. We're starting our course today. This is Emmanuel who's taking you through this course, and we're going to look at a number of things in this course. So make sure that you follow each step of this course, okay? And then we're going to look at a number of things in this course, and for you to be able to take up this course you need to have at least some basic knowledge when it comes to Excel. We're not going to look at the basic parts of Excel in this course, so if you are quite not acquainted with Excel, just make sure that you acquaint yourself with Excel as you're about to take this course so that you can be able to move with us. Alright? Then apart from that, I'll be sharing with you our working files that we're supposed to be using for each lesson. Those will be able to guide you and help you to be able to follow through with the course. So a video will be released each day in the evening. It will be uploaded. Then I'll share with you the link, just like I've shared this one with you, for all the videos that we'll be taking. And if you've got any question, any question that you want to ask, just as you can see from your screen there, you can call that number and we'll be able to assist you where we can. Alright, so this class is brought to you by Acute Plus. The one who's tutoring you is Emmanuel. I've been doing this for quite a while. For those who are joining us to this group for the first time, please feel free to ask questions where you're not clear. Okay, so right now we're going to start from where we're looking at our Excel data analysis tools. We'll look at different Excel data analysis tools. We'll look at Excel data types, data and data sets, sorting and filtering of data, conditional formatting, and much more. Alright, then from here we'll go to another topic, so make sure that you don't miss any part. So let's dive in now. When we're dealing with Excel, you are dealing usually with data. So this data that you have is what you can call as raw data that you would want to be able to make it more presentable. Okay, so right, for instance, this could be your raw data. Now raw data, the simplest definition you can give it is data stored in its small size in a field. Alright, the field, for instance, this is a field, which is in other cases that you would call this a variable. Alright, but now if you want data to be meaningful, or for you to be able to start producing meaningful information from the data, you now have to restructure the data to this. Okay, so you need each field to be well defined rather than everything compiled in one cell. Okay, this is what you are supposed to do to your data. So you have to transform your data into this meaningful set so that you can be able to analyze your data and make meaningful decisions. Okay, now when it comes to data types, let me just scroll back up there. In Excel, by default, all your data which is of the format text is always left aligned. For instance, if I come here and say Excel, I press enter, it is aligned on the left side. But for all data types of numbers, they are all aligned on the right side. So if I come here and say I made 87,000, it will be aligned on the right side. But in a case like you're dealing with the logic or the boolean, now the boolean is whereby you're asking whether it's true or false. So the true or false, these they carry what you call a boolean or a logic usually in Excel. Alright, so for instance, if I say it's true, if I press enter, this data will have a center alignment. Okay, it will always have a center alignment unless you prompt it otherwise. Now when you're dealing with errors, errors also will take a center alignment. So if I say 1 divided by 0, this will give you an error. So there is a division by 0, which means this is an error, so it will have a center alignment, and all other sorts of data. Okay, and for empty cells, of course, they'll be empty. Now this same data, for instance, the Excel which I'm talking about here, Excel, I can even put another name like business. All right, so it is aligned to the left. So if I want, I can come here and change its alignment. I can center it, or I can right align it. Okay, you can do the same to numbers, you can do the same to booleans or logical statements. All right, okay, let's move on. So when we come down here, what we want to do is this. We've got data. These are the cells, and these are the cells for the same cells. These are same cells, so we want to calculate them. So in order for us to calculate, we'll use a shortcut of Alt equals for us to be able to sum up this data. So we want to sum up the cells, so I'm just going to redirect the Excel on the data that I want to calculate. So if I press enter, it's able to give me the calculation because it's recognizing the data type that these are numbers, and it's able to add them. But in the case of this one, if I say Alt equals, I redirect it to what I want, press enter, it gives me 0. The reason why it's giving me 0 because it's recognizing this data as text. So you have to be sure of in what format is your data. So if your data type is in text, you can't do calculations. All right, things like summing, multiplying, you can't do that. So you have to be mindful of the data type that you're dealing with. Every time when you're dealing with data in Excel, make sure that you understand the data type that you are dealing with. If necessary, make sure that you just format your data in advance. All right, okay, so so in this case, if you look at this, you've got different what you have here. We are trying to calculate the running balance. Okay, so for us to calculate the running balance, this is our data. Now if our data, in this case we're calculating this one, if our data is mixed up or we don't know in what format it is hard for us to be able to follow through with data. And this is what I usually face when I'm doing consultancy with a number of people, is that the data usually they all put it in the same format. So for instance, if this data was center aligned, it would be very hard to be able to determine which one is a text and which one is not a text. Okay, so Control Z. So here in this case, I would know that I would have a problem when I'm dealing with this data because this one already is being regarded as a text. So whatever is being done here, whatever is being calculated, as long as it's making reference to this data here, as long as it's making reference to this data, it means that it's not being captured. Okay, so you will always have that problem. So make sure that your data type is well defined for you to do calculations. Let's look at another. Now there are times whereby you have got exceptions when it comes to data. So look at this. This is about some statements which are for some companies. Here for instance, we have got this data which is showing numbers, but the figures are in billions. But this data, for you to reach this point, which means the calculations have been done. Okay, all the calculations have been done, and in this case, for me to be able to follow through this data, it's a little bit difficult So in this case, if I'm filing up my final report, there's no problem with making this data, centering this data so that I can easily follow my data. Okay, so if I come and center this, it becomes more presentable like this because I'm filing my report. Okay, so it will be much easier. But in a case that this data you're still working on it, I'll always advise, always go with a default alignment of your data. Okay, all right, now let us look at other things. Let us look at data sets. Okay, so now in this case I want us to be able to start our data filtering. Let's do some data filtering and data sorting. These things will catch up with them later on. Okay, so if you're given some data, you can do some basic analysis on your data. And one of the tools that you can be able to use in Excel to do quite a number of things are sorting and filtering of data. This does really help when it comes to dealing with data. Now when you're sorting data, there are a number of ways that you can be able to do this. Okay, so the first thing that you can do is that you can go to data. Under data, you can open up a dialog box which you can be able to use to filter your data or to sort your data. So you go and say sort data. Now this dialog box, for you to do this, you just have to click in your data. When you click anywhere in your data, then click on the dialog box, it can be able to open up. Okay, when you click anywhere in your data, come to the data filter there, the sorting dialog, then you can come and do a sort. Now in this case, this is what we want to do. In this case, we want to say we want to sort the products, but we want to sort the products, then sort them by the sales. So the first thing that we want is that we want to sort by product, then we want to sort by sales. Okay, at times you can even sort by region if you want. You can sort by sales rep, then sort by sales. Okay, but the only thing that you have to note is that you are creating a hierarchy or a precedence. What you're saying is this: I want the first sorting to be based on a particular product, then afterwards the other sort should be based on the other the sales or the cargo, whichever is what you're looking for. So in this case, I want to sort by a product, and what I want is that it's supposed to be from A to Z. That's okay. Then I want to add another level. Now this is the second level. After I've sorted by this, I want to come and sort by, let's say, sales. Under sales, I want to sort it smallest to largest. So if I say okay, my data is quickly sorted out. If you look, the products, they come first, then sorting by their hierarchy. So if you look at this, it's sorting from smallest to biggest. Okay, so if I want, I can come and make a change to the same data and say okay, I want it to sort from largest to smallest. Then I say okay, so which means it will sort my products. Let me just zoom in to show you this. Okay, it will sort my products from the biggest to smallest, then to move on to the next one, biggest to smallest. All right, okay, let's look at another way that you can be able to do this. Control Z. Okay, all right, Control Z. So in order for you to be able to do this, your keyboard shortcut is Alt D. Let me click on the data. Alt D S. All right, that's the quickest way for you to open up the dialog box. You don't have to remember this. All right, now the other way you can be able to do this is that you can activate the filter on the, you can activate the filter on your data. So in this case, you just click on the data. You can come here and say filter, or if not this one, you can come to the home. Under home, you can come here under sort and filter, come and say filter there, then it will be activated. So there are two ways you can be able to activate the filter. All right, one, it's in the data. You come and click on the data, then it will be able to activate. All right, so in this case, if you're going to use the click way of filtering or sorting your data, rather, you have to start from the end going to the beginning. Okay, because here what you want is that the names are the product names are the ones supposed to be aligned. Like, all the product names must be first aligned before the cells. So what you have to do is that you do the cells first. You come to the cells, then sort largest to smallest, no problem. Everything is sorted largest to smallest. But the next sort that you have to make sure that all the products are in alphabetical order, you will come here and say sort A to Z. Now you achieve that. Okay, that's how you'll be able to achieve that. All right. Okay, so just make sure you do that. All right, let's scroll down. Let's deal with some filtering of data now. So what we have here is the same data that we're dealing with, but now we want to be able to filter it. Okay, what we want to do is to perform some filter on this data. Now, to activate the filtering of this data, just the same way as we activated the sorting, we would do the same. You just come, click in the data set, then click on the filter. Now, this is the thing why it's happening like this. If I click away from the data and try to activate the filter, it won't, because Excel is not seeing any table where you are. But if I click in the table, Excel will be able to see that, okay, this is where my table is. So in this case, you can do a number of filters. All right, in this case, if I want to say I want to filter my data by a particular product, for instance, I want quad. If I click on quad and say okay, all my data will be filtered based on quad. And when my data is filtered, I can copy this data by highlighting it. So for me to highlight the data, I click in the data, press Control italic, or others what they refer to as times. Okay, so you can be able to highlight your data. I can copy my data. Now in this case, if you look at my data, it has got a lot of dancing ants because it is filtered. All right, usually when you haven't filtered the data, the dancing ants are just around the table. But in this case, because it's filtered, that's why it is showing a lot of dancing ants. And you can't come and place this data just besides the filtered data. For instance, if I come here and say paste there, you can't do that, because if you do that, the challenge that you are having is that this data is filtered, so you will not be able to see all the data. Control Z, the best place you can paste it is below or above. Okay, so if I come below here, I can paste this data, or if I want, I can create a new sheet where I can be able to paste this data. All right, when I'm done with this, I can come here and I can say clear filter. So if I clear the filter from there, the data is my data is returned. Okay, I press escape to remove the dancing ants. All right, but the filtering that you want to do can be done in multi-level. You can be able to do a 2 criteria. You can use particular filtering methods such as text. You use date, all those. So I'll just show you some of them. So if you come to under dates, you can come and do some date filtering for different. You can do equals to, before, all these are different filters you can do on your date. When it comes to the text, you can do some text filtering for different types, so you can try them out. All right, even on the numbers, you can do different types. You can be able to do above average. You can select cells which are above average. You can even come here and say I want a top 10 sales. If I say okay, it will filter down the top 10 sales for this sales reps. Okay, all right, let's clear the filter. Let's just look at something here which is more interesting. Pivot tables. Okay, pivot tables. Now pivot tables, they will help you in a number of things, because instead of writing some crazy formulas, pivot tables can be able to do these things for you. So now pivot tables, they are one of the simplest ways you can actually analyze data in Excel. For instance, I've got my data here. Now I want to find out what is the sum sales for each product. So for instance, you have all these products, you've got this, you've got that one. If I'm to use the formulas here, it will take me quite a while. But if I'll use pivot tables here, it is very much easy. Now how do you do this? You just click in your data, you go to insert, then pivot tables. It will pop up. It has led the dimensions of your table. Then it is asking you, do you want to put it in a new sheet or existing sheet? Now in this case, I'm dealing with little data here, so I'll just put it in the existing sheet. Then I'll select where I need to start from. Okay, then I say okay. All right, so my pivot table is been activated. Now the next thing that I have to do is, I've got 4 fields here which I'm dealing with. I've got the filter, the column, the row, and the value. So what I want is to find out the total sales for the product. So the product, each product must give me a total sales of it. So the first thing is, I drag my product to my rows. All right, so the first thing, I just grab my product, drop it in my rows. Now what it does, that it gives me all the unique values in that table when it comes to the product. Okay, it has given me all the unique values. So in this case, there are only 3 unique values. Then and the next thing, I drag my sales to my values, and it gives me automatically, it gives me the sum. All right, it has given me the sum for each product. Now if you look at my data here, the row label here doesn't make much sense to me, especially when you're dealing with this, especially when you're dealing this in the real world. This doesn't make much sense. So what you do is that you can go to design. Under design, you can go to layout. Under layout, you can show in outline form or tabular. Where are you? Tabular. Okay, then it will fix that for you. All right, so now your data is in that format. The next thing that you would want to do is, you're dealing with your sales here, so they can be in dollars or they can be in kwacha. And for you to be able to affect that, you can go to number format. Okay, under number format here, you come to, you're dealing with currency. So if you're dealing with the kwacha here, you would come here and say ZMK. You just drag it a bit. Our ZMK is there. If you're dealing with a kwacha, then I don't want decimals. I can remove the decimals. Then I can say okay. So my data has got the right currency. Okay, let us look at another example. In this case, I want it to be able to do a count. I want it to count how many sales were done for a particular product. It's the same thing that we're going to do here. We'll go to our data, click in the data, then go to insert, go to pivot tables, then check, just always make sure that you confirm that your data, the data outline is okay. Then we want it to be just pressed over there, say okay, and we want our product to be in our row, and we want our sales to be in our value. and now we want to do a count. Now by automatically this has gone for a summation, but we don't want a summation, we want a count. So we click in the data, right click, then go to summarize by count. So when you summarize by count, you know that there are the number of sales which happened for this product were this, for quad were that, for tri-fried were that. Then it gives you the grand total. And always you can make this more presentable by going to the design. At first we use the tabular, now we can use outline, and it will still do the good work. The difference is that outline, it clears out all those grid lines within your data. All right, let's move on. This is the count of sales, correct? Let's go down. All right, now what happens to your data when you have got an empty cell? Okay. So when you're using pivot tables and you've got an empty cell, what happens? So let's go to insert, we go to pivot tables, we want our data to be there, pick it up, we want product, we want sales in there. Then if you look at this, let's transform this to count. We go for the count. So when you've got an empty cell, it depends on what point you have the empty cell, but literally what you see is this: the record which has got an empty cell has not been counted as part of the data because it is an incomplete record. That's why you see that you've got a grand total of 10, and if you look at here, our grand total is 11. Okay, so you always have to make sure that you are mindful of the empty cells. All right, make sure you're mindful of the right empty cells. So you can go to your design, go to tabular, just activate the product. All right, okay, so if I come here under product here, it is showing me the products I have, and I can even make a filter if I want to. Okay, we'll leave that for another lesson. Okay, let's look more at some more examples. We've looked at how an empty cell behaves. Okay, come on. All right, so we've looked at how an empty cell behaves. Let's drag this down. So it's the same thing that will happen if you've got an empty cell there. So let's go to some inconsistency in data. What happens when you've got some inconsistency in the data? So we come here and we go to insert, then we go to pivot table. Now if you look at this, there are some inconsistencies. Probably you might not even see it, but let's go to existing table. We want to press our table there, then say okay. Now if I want to bring the product into that, then I want to tabulate it into, okay, now there are a little bit of some inconsistencies, but I think Excel is being kind with us because I think we're using the latest version, so it has learnt in order how to avoid such kind of errors. But the error that you might have if you try to do this yourself, you might have an error because this data is inconsistent and Excel is not able to read it very well. The reason why is this: if you look at one of the data here, this is in a text format, yet the rest are in date. So if you've got this level of inconsistency, at times Excel will give you some problems. So you have to be mindful of that. So data must be consistent. If the data type is different, it's showing text, what else is supposed to be a date, you have a problem with Excel. All right, let's look at data grouping. Now when we talk about data grouping, the the easiest reference I can make, for instance, is when you're dealing with probably age. So you say the age between 15 to 25 and the 25 to 35, all that. That is grouping of data. So in this case, you can do also a grouping of data. For instance, I want to do some grouping of data using date. So I can come here and say, click on my data, go to insert, pivot table. I want to have my data there. Then I want my date to come in my rows. Now Excel is being kind with us here. It has grouped in advance for us, but there are moments that it doesn't group for you. It depends with the version of Excel that you are using. So in this case, Excel was able to read and tell and gave a suggestion. But if I come here and say ungroup, I don't want this data to be grouped. Now it has been grouped in come on. Okay, expand. All right. Oh, here, ungroup the data. Okay, so I have ungrouped the data. So I want this data to be it has been ungrouped. Now for me to group this data, if Excel is not kind with you, it will not group it just immediately. But in a case that it doesn't group it immediately, you can come to group. Then you can be able to select here and say what type of grouping do you want. And Excel will always give you some hints here and there, but in this case we want to do with months. So we click on months, then we say okay. So we know that we wanted to start at that date and end that date. It was already picked that from our data. We say okay. So it has grouped them in months, January to February. Then we can come here and state how many sales were done in what in January and February. So we're able to know how many sales were done, and if we want, we can do a count. In this case, I want to know the sum total of the sales, and I also want, I will drag again the same sales and bring it into this the sales there. In this one, I want to know what is the count or what is the frequency of the sales. So I go and say summarize value by count. Okay, so I know the total number of sales which happened in a particular month and the sum total of the sales. Then this, I need it to be formatted. I want it to be in currency. All right, I'll leave it in dollars. I don't want some decimal places. Then I'll say okay. So now I know format cells, currency, and say okay. All right, so our data is formatted into the Excel format. Let me just do some data consistency here. Control Z. Want some consistency in this data, highlight that. Then we want currency. All right, okay. Then you can even drop from here the okay. All right, so you can even do that for this one. You can come here, change this to currency, reduce that. But I always make sure that I do this from the dialog box. All right. Okay, so now we know that this is the total sales for the month of January, and this is the total sales for the month of February, and we have got the frequency distribution there for the months, and we want this one to be in a layout or outline so that we see that this is representing date. All right. Okay, that is on the grouping. uh, let's look at another one. You can do the grouping by a particular time, you can do by age or cells. So let's do a grouping by age. All right, so let's go to our insert, then we go to our pivot table. So there are shortcuts which you can be able to use to do this. So I want this to be just to come besides, then say okay. Then we want to group this data by age. So how do we want this data to be grouped? We can come here, right click, and go to group. We want to start, let's give it a more solid number. Say let's say want to start at 15, then we want to end at 80. All right, or 15, then end at 80. Then we want it to increments of 10. Okay, we want it to increase by 10. Then if we say okay, it will be grouped in that format. All right, so 15 to 24, 25 to 35, just like that. Okay, so now we have the data grouped. Now that the data has been grouped, what we would want is now to bring in the cells for each age group. Then from here we are able to tell that the age group that had more cells was actually the age group of 15 to 24. All right, that's a age group which had more cells. Then from here you can be able to derive some better decisions to enforce. Now if you're using later versions of Excel, you'll find that here it might tell you 15 to 25, and here to say 25 to 30. So what it does is that the upper 25, the next one, the upper or the upper here, the upper one, which is 25, is not included here. The 25 is included on the next one. All right, that's how you should be able to note of that. Okay, so this has been pivot tables. There is more to pivot tables, but we'll look and see if we can be able to dive in and more with the classes which are coming forth. But for now, try out this. Tomorrow we'll be able to do other things. We'll be doing other things such as conditional formatting. We'll do some conditional formatting and many more things. All right, see you tomorrow.